Every Thursday morning, I woke up and sent my parents $700. Rain or shine, sick or healthy, the money always went through. I told myself it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. But 3 years passed and nothing changed. Then my son turned 7, and they promised they'd be there. They swore on the phone. But when the party started, their chairs stayed empty. When I finally called to ask what happened, my mother's words felt like ice water. "We don't care about that boy." My hands went numb. The phone almost slipped. I didn't yell or beg. I just opened my laptop and started canceling everything. Every subscription, every auto pay, every connection. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up with a new message. And what I read made everything finally make sense. For 3 whole years, my Thursday mornings looked identical. Wake up at dawn, check my bank balance, send exactly $700 to my parents by 7 a.m. No questions asked. It wasn't about being generous anymore. It was about avoiding their anger. Maybe I hoped that one day they'd finally accept me, not as the daughter who ruined their plans, but as someone who mattered. After working double shifts at the hospital, I'd come home exhausted. My son's school projects covered the kitchen counter. His smile in those photos kept me going. I'd log into my account, type the transfer details, and watch the confirmation appear. Payment complete. My mother never said thank you. My father acted like the money appeared by magic. But whenever their roof leaked or their car needed repairs, I got the call. I fixed it before they could even finish explaining. It was easier than dealing with their disappointment. Easier than remembering I was their daughter. My son didn't know the truth. He thought his grandparents lived in another country, not just 20 miles away in the next town. "Mommy, can they come watch me play soccer?" He'd ask, kicking his ball against the fence. I'd ruffle his hair and say, "Maybe one day, buddy." He'd grin, trusting me completely. Children always trust. I used to trust too, believing that time heals everything, that eventually they'd want to know their grandson, that blood ties mean something. I imagined them in our backyard, pushing him on the swing, teaching him the card games they taught me. But every conversation with my father reminded me we were strangers now. He talked to me like I was his assistant. "The electric bill is high this month. Also, your mother needs her prescription refilled." On quiet evenings, I'd watch my son play with his toy cars, lining them up carefully. He'd assign them roles, this one's grandma, this one's grandpa, making them race together and celebrate. My heart would crack watching him. He was creating the family he deserved but didn't have. So when his birthday arrived, I planned everything perfectly. Colorful banners, a chocolate cake shaped like a rocket ship, juice boxes in a big cooler. I even rented a small bounce house from the neighbor. He wore his favorite superhero cape, his face glowing with pure joy. "Do you think they'll really come today, Mom?" he asked, watching the driveway as friends arrived. I squeezed his shoulder, my smile tight. "I think so, sweetheart. Let's give them time." But something inside me already knew better. By 4 o'clock, the candles had burned down to nothing, and the juice was getting warm. The yard smelled like grass and birthday cake, but the happy screams were dying down. My son kept looking at the gate, his fingers sticky from frosting, his cape dragging in the dirt. Every 10 minutes or so, he'd whisper the same question, softer each time. "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa still coming?" I smiled the way moms do when their hearts are shattering. "Maybe, baby. Maybe they got lost." But nobody was lost. No text, no call, no explanation. Just silence that felt heavier than any storm. I kept the party alive even after the last kid went home. My son sat on the front steps, holding a cupcake, his light-up sneakers blinking slowly. He stared down the street like hope itself might appear around the corner. When the sun started setting, he said quietly, "Maybe they mixed up the days." I sat down next to him, tucking his hair behind his ear. "Maybe," I whispered, even though my throat felt like it was closing. "But we had fun, right?" He nodded, yawning now, his eyelids heavy. That night, after he fell asleep clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, I sat in the dark living room scrolling through pictures. Him laughing with his friends, the bounce house in the background, his face covered in frosting. Every single photo felt like evidence that I'd done my best. Then I saw it, Mom's email from earlier that day. Happy birthday to him. 4 words. No phone call, no card, not even his name. I stared at my screen until the words blurred. Then I picked up my phone and called. I don't know what I expected. Maybe an apology. Maybe a lie that sounded kind. My father picked up. His voice was cold, irritated, like I was bothering him during his favorite TV show. "What do you want, Sarah? Why didn't you come?" I asked, my voice shaking. A long pause. A heavy sigh filled with disgust. We had better things to do. Dad, I said slowly. He waited all day. He drew you pictures. Another pause. Then the sentence that broke something inside me forever. That boy doesn't matter to us. For a few seconds, I couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat and the hum of the refrigerator. My whole body went numb before my brain understood what happened. What did you say? He didn't answer. He just hung up. I sat there frozen, the phone still against my ear, staring at the dark window across the room. No tears came. No screaming. Just emptiness. My son's drawings covered the fridge behind me, crayon rainbows and stick figures holding hands in a world that didn't exist. My hands began trembling. I put the phone on the table, stood up slowly, and whispered into the empty kitchen, okay. The silence felt heavier than sadness. I walked to my son's bedroom. He was asleep, his hair messy, his cheeks still smudged with chocolate. I knelt beside his bed and kissed his forehead gently. You matter more than anything, I whispered. Even if they can't see it. Back in the kitchen, I looked at the clock. 8:15 p.m., usually around this time, I'd check my banking app, making sure next week's payment was ready. My finger hovered over the screen, then stopped. Not anymore. I poured the leftover juice down the drain, wiped down the counters, and stood in the quiet kitchen, knowing that tonight everything was about to change forever. Sleep didn't come that night. I just sat at the table, watching the clock move past midnight, hearing his words over and over. That boy doesn't matter to us. The words didn't fade. They burned deeper every time I remembered them. My phone sat on the counter where I'd left it, screen dark and silent. My reflection looked back at me from the black glass. Messy hair, red eyes, a version of myself I barely knew anymore. I picked it up, not to call them back, but to end something that should have ended long ago. For 3 years, I'd kept the peace by paying their bills. Every Thursday at 7 a.m., I turned my guilt into dollars. Now I was finished buying love that was never real. I opened my banking app with shaking hands and scrolled through the scheduled payments. Phone bill, water bill, car insurance, medical expenses. Each one had my card attached to their accounts. I looked at the list, then started removing them one by one, like cutting strings on a puppet. Tap, cancel, confirm. With every tap, my heartbeat got steadier. The shaking stopped. When I reached the final line, weekly transfer $700 every Thursday, I felt strangely peaceful. I deleted that one too. Just like that, 3 years of routine disappeared. For a long moment, everything was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. The house settled. The darkness outside pressed against the windows. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Can you order us pizza tonight? Nothing expensive. We're hungry and there's nothing here. I stared at the message. 20 minutes. That's how long it took after calling their grandson worthless before they wanted food delivered. 20 minutes after destroying my child, they expected dinner. My thumb hung over the keyboard. I could have written anything. An explanation. A final goodbye. A curse. But I didn't. I locked my phone and placed it face down on the table. Instead, I went back to my son's room. He was curled up under his blankets, breathing softly, holding the stuffed dinosaur he named Buddy. I sat on the edge of his bed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. Never again, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. That's when the guilt finally died. I understood I owed them nothing. Not money, not explanations, not another second of my peace. My silence said more than any argument ever could. When I stood up, the air felt different, like a weight I'd carried for years had finally lifted off my shoulders. I turned off his nightlight and watched shadows fill the hallway, clean and final. Some betrayals don't need screaming. They need closure. And that night, I buried the part of me that still believed parents always love their children. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen like nothing had changed. But I couldn't stop hearing his voice. That boy doesn't matter to us. It played underneath every noise, even the birds outside. My son was still sleeping. I made tea just to hold something warm. The phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Ms. Chen? This is Marcus, your parents' property manager. I'm calling because the rent didn't go through, which is unusual for you. Unusual for me. The phrase stung like a wasp. That's not my problem anymore, I said calmly. They'll have to figure it out themselves. He paused. They told me you handle their finances. I used to, I said. My voice was flat, steady. Not anymore. When I hung up, something shifted inside me, like a rope snapping. I wasn't their backup plan anymore, just a woman drinking cold tea in her own home. At noon, my sister called. Sarah, Mom says you've gone crazy. I let out a short laugh. Define crazy. She says you're abandoning them. I am. Jessica went silent for a moment. Good. I'm done too. I sat up straighter. What? I've been helping them, she admitted quietly. Not as much as you. Maybe $400 a month. Gas money, groceries, little things. I thought if we both helped, maybe they'd soften. They never told me, I breathed. They never mentioned you either, she said. Guess we were both paying for the same guilt. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the mug tighter. So they lied to both of us. Yeah, but this time we're stopping. Her voice cracked slightly. You did the right thing, Sarah. Before I could respond, another notification lit up my screen, a tag on Instagram. A video titled, The Real Story About Our Daughter. My stomach dropped. Oh no, don't watch it, Jessica said quickly. But I was already opening it. The preview showed my mother dabbing her eyes with a tissue like an actress in a movie, my father sitting stiff beside her, arms folded. Mom sniffled into the camera. We've always been there for Sarah, no matter what. But she's been spreading lies, telling everyone we're terrible grandparents who refuse to see our grandson. That's completely false. Dad leaned toward the screen. She's been giving us money we never asked for. She needs professional help. I didn't blink. I just watched, numb, until the moment I knew was coming. My father held up a printed photo of my son grinning in his superhero cape at his birthday party and repeated those same words again, this time to strangers online. This boy means nothing to our family. I froze. My son's laughter from yesterday, his little hands clapping at his cake, flashed in my mind like a movie reel catching fire. I closed the video before it finished. Within 30 minutes, messages flooded in. Did you see this? Is that your dad? Comments multiplied under the video, half supportive, half cruel. Who says that about a 7-year-old? She probably pushed them away. Sending prayers. If this is real, it's heartbreaking. I powered off my phone. The house felt too still, like even the walls were holding their breath. Later, Jessica texted. Don't respond. Let them drown in their own words. I listened. Silence, I was learning, could speak louder than rage. By the next day, the video had spread through our small town's social media. Their book club friends shared it with praying hands. Others commented, what kind of grandparents say that? The tide was shifting without me saying a single word. The following morning, Marcus texted again. They've been given notice. 30 days to move out. I'm sorry it came to this. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Justice, for once, moved fast. 3 days later, my cousin Amy called, her voice shaking with fury. They showed up at the family barbecue. Can you believe the nerve? I frowned. They weren't invited. They came anyway, trying to get sympathy from everyone. Amy, I'm tired of pretending, she said. You should check Instagram later. Then she hung up. 2 hours later, I did. The video was already going viral, shaky footage from someone's phone. A sunny backyard, picnic tables with red and white checkered cloths, kids running around. My parents stood near the grill, my mom talking to a circle of relatives with her hand on her heart. No matter what Sarah told you, she said dramatically, we love her deeply. And that poor, confused child, he just doesn't understand. Amy's voice cut through sharp and clear. Before or after you said he doesn't matter. The camera swung toward her. She was holding up her phone, volume turned all the way up. From the tiny speaker came my father's voice, unmistakable and cold. That boy doesn't matter to us. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw clenched tight. The entire backyard fell silent, except for a dog barking somewhere nearby. Then my Uncle Robert stood up, slowly setting down his plate. His voice was calm but firm. If that's how you talk about your own grandson, you're not welcome here. Nobody disagreed. Nobody defended them. They left without another word, heads down, faces drained of color. The camera panned back to Amy. Someone muttered about time. Another voice said, good riddance. I watched the clip 4 times, then set my phone down and laughed a quiet, trembling laugh that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Not mean, just free. Jessica called that evening. You saw it. I did. They destroyed themselves, she said. Finally. They did, I said softly. And I didn't lift a finger. Sometimes the truth does the work for you, she murmured. That night, I sat by my son's bed while he slept, his hand wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. I listened to the sound of rain tapping the window and thought about every Thursday morning I'd wasted paying for love that was never there. I opened my laptop not to send money, but to look at the payment history one last time. 3 years of transfers, line after line of completed transactions. I scrolled to the bottom and whispered, not ever again. The next morning, the posts in our town's Facebook group were harsh. Local couple exposed for rejecting grandchild. Someone had stitched both videos together, the tearful performance and the barbecue confrontation. The comments were ruthless. Fake tears and real cruelty. You can't throw away family like that. That poor little boy deserves better. By afternoon, their church removed their names from the volunteer page. The property manager changed their locks early. Their supporters went completely silent. I didn't post anything. I didn't gloat. I simply took my son to the park. He drew rockets on the sidewalk with colored chalk and said, "Mom, this one's for Aunt Jessica." The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and summer rain. He giggled, and the sound was so pure it made my eyes sting. When we got home, I found an envelope tucked in the mailbox, plain white paper with my name written across the front. Inside was a short note in Aunt Linda's handwriting. They chose their pride over their family. You chose your son. That's what real love looks like. I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Some wins don't need celebration. That night, as I tucked my son into bed, he yawned big. "Mom, can Grandma and Grandpa come for my next birthday?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "No, sweetheart. They won't be coming anymore." He thought about it, then nodded. "That's okay. We can invite Aunt Jessica and Uncle Robert instead." I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Yeah, buddy. That sounds really good." When I turned off his lamp, the room was quiet. But this time it wasn't sad. It was calm. Earned. The next week, everything felt lighter, like the storm had finally passed and left clear skies. The constant notifications, the demands, the chaos, it all faded into background noise. My parents had deleted their social media completely, their accounts just gone. Their church posted a vague statement about forgiveness and healing, but everyone understood what it really meant. I didn't feel like I'd won a battle. I just felt free. The kind of freedom that doesn't announce itself, that just sits with you in the morning sun and lets you finally breathe. My son was singing at the breakfast table, spreading peanut butter on crackers, completely unaware of the storm that had passed over us. Jessica came over that Saturday with groceries and a smile that reached her eyes for the first time in years. "You look different," she said. "Maybe I am," I replied. We drove to Aunt Linda's house for lunch. Apple pie cooling on the windowsill, sunshine streaming through white curtains. She hugged my son first, lifting him up and spinning him. Then she hugged me tight. "Freedom looks good on you, Sarah," she said warmly. Over lunch, she talked about setting limits, about how real love includes respect and boundaries. I listened closely, really heard her, and for the first time I truly believed it. Later, while my son drew pictures at the table, Aunt Linda pressed an envelope into my hand. "For when you forget why you chose yourself." Inside was a single sentence. "Love without respect is not love at all." That night, I watched my son sleep peacefully and realized the quiet in our home didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like safety. I stood in his doorway, watching him breathe softly under his dinosaur blanket. For the first time in years, tomorrow didn't feel scary. I didn't owe anyone my peace except him. And myself. My parents had chosen pride and appearances. I chose freedom and truth. And that choice, quiet, steady, permanent, was the strongest statement I could ever make. If you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose your own peace and protect the people who truly matter. Thank you for listening to my story.